No to an offer of mediation with the Kurds. Turkey remains resolute on day 4 of its incursion in Syria. This is the country's defence ministry says pro-Turkey troops have captured a key border town. Placed under curfew and military control, Ecuador's president ramps up security in the capital amid ongoing anti-government protests. Saturday then marking the 10th day of clashes sparked by cuts to fuel subsidies. Also coming up, the worst typhoon to hit Japan in 60 years. Torrential rains and gale-force winds lash large parts of the country. Millions of people have been urged to evacuate amid mudslides and flooding. Hello and welcome. You're tuned into France 24. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahe with the headlines for you this hour. But first, a Turkish offensive against Kurdish forces in northeastern Syria shows little sign of abating. Entering day 4 of the incursion, pro-Turkey forces continue their advance on key border towns, announcing the capture of Ras Al Ain. Well, amid fierce fighting, the US has reiterated threats of sanctions if Turkey fails to halt its assault. Meanwhile, in Cairo, the Arab League's Secretary General called Turkey's offensive an invasion of Arab states' land. Have a listen.
There are real fears of potential ethnic cleansing of the Kurds in this region. As for the plans of demographic change to accommodate millions, as was announced by the Turkish side, to replace those expelled is in fact a moral and human shame.
We'll bring us more on this story. France 24's Jasper Mortimer reports from the Turkish side of the border.
The Kurds of Turkey are opposed to this war because it puts them in a difficult position. Their country, Turkey, is fighting their people. I was in Ceylanpınar yesterday and today. It's a Kurdish majority town on the Syrian border. On the Syrian side, it's called Ras Al Ain. Now, 2 people in Ceylanpınar have been killed and about half a dozen wounded by mortars fired from Ras Al Ain. In other words, Syrian Kurds are killing and wounding Turkish Kurds. Nevertheless, the Kurds in Ceylanpınar don't blame their cousins in Ras Al Ain, they blame the Turkish government for this war. The Kurds in Ceylanpınar have relatives in Ras Al Ain. They used to visit there often, and they say Ras Al Ain is not a nest of terrorists. The border running between the 2 towns was quiet until this offensive began on Wednesday. They also recalled that when President Recep Tayyip Erdogan pursued his policy of opening up towards the Kurds between 2009 and 2015, the leader of the Syrian Kurds, Saleh Muslim, visited Ankara twice as a guest of the Turkish foreign minister. And one Kurd said to me, and now President Erdogan calls Saleh Muslim a terrorist. How can this be? So for the Kurds of Ceylanpınar, this war is not a matter of terrorism, it's a matter of politics.
Well, amid the conflict, pro-Kurdish protesters rallied across several European cities on Saturday, denouncing Turkey's incursion in Syria. In Athens, some 2,000 protesters marched on the Turkish and US embassies, while in Cologne, 10,000 protesters waved the Kurdish flag and chanted anti-Erdogan slogans. Well, thousands of people also demonstrated here in Paris, close to the Place de la République.
France must take concrete action against Turkey to stop this war, stop the Turkish military invasion they are carrying out on the one hand, and on the other, to prevent the loss of life and stop the reinforcement of jihadists.
In my opinion, and that of everyone here, the German government and all European Union member states must be made aware of this, and the sanctions against Erdogan must be continued. And this time they must also come into force and not just be empty words.
Erdogan has begun an attack in Syria, in Rojava, and we are here to protest about this, because down there, Erdogan is trying to commit genocide. Those Kurds who are in Greece and friends of the Kurds are gathered here today to protest as much as we can in order for this genocide to stop.
Well, in this next report, we look at the background to the conflict in northern Syria, where over the last few years, Kurds had gained control of a significant swathe of territory. France 24's Nick Rushworth brings us this report.
Kurdish fighters were on the front line in the battle against the so-called Islamic State group, among them many women.
I'm going to give you the location of Islamic State.
11,000 Kurdish fighters have been killed in the fight against IS, including in the battles for Raqqa and Kobani.
We have freed Kobani.
Kurdish territory at the start was confined to 3 areas along Syria's border with Turkey. It now makes up around 1/3 of Syria, a significant stronghold, one that is unacceptable to Ankara.
What you see on the map resembles a proto-Kurdish state. In mid-2015, the Turkish position hardened a great deal. It began talking about military intervention on Syrian soil.
Turkey's goal is to break the Kurdish demographic grip on northeastern Syria. The Kurds make up 15% of the Syrian population and have de facto autonomy. The Turkish offensive is a blow to Kurdish hopes for independence.
It is not the end of utopias or dreams, but it is a significant setback for men and women fighting for their freedom and an autonomous status. They want to be able to protect their language and culture so they can be passed on to future generations.
The Kurds during the war have been accused of chasing out local Arab populations from towns they captured. That is a stain on their fight, but not one preventing Western countries from backing the Kurds.
Let's bring you some other world news now. Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno has placed the capital, Quito, under curfew and called in the military. This amid the 10th day of clashes over austerity plans. Well, in a bid to quell those protests, police fired tear gas, blocked access to roads linking to the city's airport. Anger was first sparked by plans to cut fuel subsidies. France 24's Fraser Jackson reports.
Scenes of chaos on the streets of Quito for the second weekend in a row. Saturday was the 10th day of protests levelled against President Moreno and his government in the wake of their announcements that they were scrapping fuel subsidies.
We rightly and logically went out to protest and reject those measures because we are starving. Here we have been repressed and the national media are silent. Police have thrown tear gas at us. They have shot at us and nobody knows about it. Unfortunately, human rights are being violated.
Over the last few weeks, anger towards the police has been growing. Protesters had taken 10 police officers hostage, although they have now been freed. In an attempt to stop the violence on the streets, President Moreno has placed Quito under curfew and military control. On Friday, he addressed the nation and urged the indigenous leaders of the movement to sit down for discussions.
I sent this message to the leaders of the indigenous organizations and their base. We need to stop the violence. The country needs to regain peace. The nation should know that we have the will to open dialogue.
That call was initially rejected, but after consulting with its members, CONAI, a group representing the indigenous community, reversed their decision. The slashing of fuel subsidies was one of a number of measures announced to help the government secure a $4.2 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund to help improve the economy. But according to the Energy Ministry, the protests against their removal have already curbed nearly 1.2 million barrels of oil production.
Away from Ecuador, Japan's experiencing its worst typhoon in 6 decades, with heavy rains and hurricane-faced winds pummeling large parts of the country. The powerful typhoon Hagibis made landfall on Saturday evening, triggering flooding and mudslides. At least 2 people have been killed and dozens more injured. France 24's Clément Bonnereau reports.
Rescue teams hard at work after 3 people went missing in Tomioka, Gunma Prefecture, some 130 kilometers north of Tokyo. Heavy rains there caused devastating landslides on Saturday evening, sweeping dozens of houses in the city. Large parts of Japan are now facing similar devastation. Typhoon Hagibis made landfall on the country's main island of Honshu shortly before 7 p.m. local time. It's now moving up north along Japan's east coast, with wind speeds of up to 225 kilometers per hour. Authorities have warned it could be the worst storm to hit the country in more than 60 years.
Unprecedented heavy rain has been seen in municipalities for which an emergency warning was issued. Landslides and flash floods may have already occurred. Utmost attention is needed to protect lives.
7.3 million people were evacuated earlier on Saturday and Friday as a precautionary measure, and thousands of homes were without power. Train services have been halted and more than 1,000 flights grounded. The typhoon has also disrupted the Japanese Grand Prix and caused the cancellation of Rugby World Cup matches.
Next, the arrest of a Frenchman at Glasgow airport on Friday night proved to be a rather embarrassing mistake for police. Following an anonymous tip-off, authorities held a man who they believed was suspected of killing his wife and 4 children in 2011. DNA test swiftly revealed the man being held was not, in fact, the murder suspect.
The mystery remains. French police sources have confirmed that the man arrested at Glasgow airport on Friday is not Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès. Neither his DNA nor his fingerprints match those of the suspected murderer. The man, whose identity has not been made public, was seized by Scottish police after French investigators tried to arrest him at Charles de Gaulle Airport on Friday, acting on a tip-off that the 58-year-old fugitive was travelling under a fake name. They were unable to catch him in time, so they warned Interpol, and police in Glasgow were waiting for him when the flight landed. According to reports, he looked nothing like the suspect, but authorities went ahead and took him in for questioning based on a partial fingerprint match. Police also suspecting that Dupont de Ligonnès may have undergone plastic surgery to change his appearance. But for now, the mystery remains unresolved. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès has been on the run since 2011 after killing his wife and 4 children at his family home in Nantes. Despite an international arrest warrant, he has so far evaded police. He was last seen in the department of Var in southern France on April 14, 2011. At the time, he was caught on camera withdrawing money from an ATM.
And finally, Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge sent shockwaves through the world of sport on Saturday as he became the first athlete to break the 2-hour barrier for a marathon. The Olympic champion and world record holder clocked in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40.2 seconds at an event set up for the attempt. His feat, though, won't be recognised as the official marathon world record. France 24's Delana D'Souza explains why.
This is the moment Eliud Kipchoge made history. The 34-year-old has become the first person to cover a marathon distance in under 2 hours. He even came in 10 seconds faster than anticipated, covering the distance in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds.
I've been putting in my heart and my mind that I want to run under 2 hours in marathon to make history and pass a positive thought and a message to the whole world that no human is limited.
The 8-time marathon winner and 3-time Olympic medalist was cheered on by supporters in Vienna. But back home in Kenya, his family gathered around the television screen to watch what Kipchoge now refers to as the best moment of his life.
I am so happy today because he has won for Kenya and the world.
While Saturday's time has broken records, it won't be recognized by the governing body for athletics. That's because the marathon wasn't run in open competition, and pace-setting teams were used to keep Kipchoge on track. But nevertheless, the official record for the fastest marathon run is also claimed by Eliud Kipchoge, after he ran the distance in 2 hours, 1 minute and 39 seconds in Berlin last year.
Well done to Kipchoge there. You are very much up to date. More international headlines shortly here on France 24. Join us then.